Paul Miller eased the moving truck down the cracked asphalt driveway, slowing as the worn two-story house came into view. Beside him, his wife Sarah studied the peeling paint and overgrown yard with a mixture of hope and weary realism. In the back seat, their children, 14-year-old Chloe and 8-year-old Ben, pressed against the windows, eager for their first proper look at their new home in the small town of Oakhaven. Only a month ago they'd traded city noise for this quieter, more affordable life after Paul lost his job. Paul, ever the optimist, saw the fixer-upper status as a challenge they could handle. Inside, the air hung thick with dust. Cardboard boxes stood waiting. Sarah set her purse down, the floorboards groaning underfoot. "Well," she sighed softly, trying to envision potential. "At least it's ours." Chloe wandered off, clearly unimpressed, while Ben explored with noisy enthusiasm. Paul surveyed the entryway, mentally cataloguing repairs. He felt capable. Sarah found Chloe tracing scratches on an old fireplace mantel. Through the window, a tall wooden fence and dense shrubs obscured most of the backyard. The agent had mentioned a pool. Paul joined them near the sliding glass door. "Let's see this famous pool," he said, offering a half-smile. The pool had been a selling point, something he imagined fixing up for summer fun. "I just hope it's not a complete swamp," Sarah replied, her voice tight with the underlying financial strain this move represented. They slid the door open onto a small concrete patio. Overgrown grass and tangled bushes dominated the yard. To the right, a heavy, faded tarp stretched over a large shape, weighed down by cinder blocks, the pool. Chloe and Ben raced ahead. The concrete deck around the pool was cracked. A sour, stagnant odor hung in the air. Ben wrinkled his nose. "Are we really going to swim in that?" Paul cautiously lifted a corner of the tarp with his foot. Beneath it, the water was a vile, murky green, thick with algae and debris. Definitely not swimmer-friendly. Chloe took a step back, noticing faded graffiti on the fence. "Stay away." An odd chill touched Sarah despite the warm sun. Just then, two boys about Chloe's age appeared on the other side of the fence. "You the new owners?" one called out. "Yeah, that's us," Paul replied. The boys shrugged. "Just, some folks say the pool's cursed. Ain't been touched in years." He exchanged a glance with his friend, a look that hinted at more than just teenage rumors, before they vanished. "Cursed or not, we can't leave it like this," Paul said, moving a cinder block. "Mosquito heaven. We'll drain it, clean it, see what we're dealing with." He found an old, submersible pump in the dilapidated pump house and managed to get it working, running a hose towards a drainage ditch near the street. With a low whir, dark, foul-smelling water began trickling out. They settled into a grim routine, Paul checking the pump, Sarah clearing debris from the deck. The water level slowly dropped. As the sun dipped lower, the smell intensified. The receding water revealed a slimy carpet of algae and leaves coating the pool bottom. A swirl of trash had collected near the main drain. And beyond it, something else, something dark and still. Paul shone a heavy-duty flashlight into the murky depths. The beam caught the glint of torn, dark plastic. Another piece of tarp. But this shape looked too contained, too deliberately wrapped. Sarah stepped closer, squinting. "You see that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yeah," Paul said quietly. The object seemed anchored by concrete blocks or heavy bricks. They exchanged a look, unspoken dread tightening the air between them. Ben called out from the house. "Mum, Dad, dinner." "Be right there," Paul called back, his voice strained. He switched off the pump. "Let's finish for tonight." Neither wanted to leave it, but they needed better light, different tools. Maybe, they both thought privately, they needed someone else entirely. Back inside, the image of that submerged bundle haunted Sarah. It could be anything, she told herself, construction debris. But a cold knot formed in her stomach. What if it's not just garbage? Dawn broke cool and grey. Paul felt drawn back to the pool. Most of the water had drained overnight, leaving the bottom exposed except for a few inches of muddy sludge near the drain where the bundle lay, looking even more sinister in the pale light. Sarah joined him, arms crossed, her face pale. Paul grabbed a long pool pole from the garage and cautiously poked the edge of the tarp. He lifted a corner. A truly putrid smell billowed out, decay, sharp and sickening. He saw something pale beneath the ripped plastic. Not debris. Not an animal. Human. He stopped breathing for a second, the pole clattering to the concrete. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his hand shaking. The first police cruiser arrived within minutes. The officer took one look, his face instantly grim, and radioed for backup, urging Paul and Sarah back towards the house. Soon, the yard was cordoned off with yellow tape. Forensics technicians in white suits began setting up around the pool's edge, their movements methodical and quiet. Chloe and Ben emerged, drawn by the flashing lights. Sarah waved them frantically back inside, her voice trembling. Ben looked utterly confused, his small face crumpling. Sarah wished she had answers, but all she felt was rising panic. An older detective, Lieutenant Morris, introduced himself. He spoke calmly, explaining the process as more official vehicles arrived. The remains would need to be carefully recovered and examined. He asked Paul gentle questions. Had they noticed anything else? Did the previous owner, Richard Blackwood, leave any disclosures about the pool's condition? Paul answered numbly, his gaze fixed on the grim activity unfolding in his new backyard. Two technicians began carefully lifting the waterlogged tarp. A collective hush fell over the assembled officers and technicians. Though decomposed and wrapped, the shape beneath was unmistakably human remains. Skeletal outlines were visible through layers of rotted fabric. Sarah turned away, feeling faint, clutching Paul's arm to stay upright. Later that afternoon, Morris returned, his expression somber. Preliminary findings suggest the victim may be female, he told them quietly. Based on visible trauma, foul play is strongly suspected. By evening, the local news had the story. Human remains found in Oak Haven Pool. Camera crews camped out on the sidewalk. The phone rang constantly. Curious neighbors, distant relatives who'd heard the news. Sarah tried to shield the kids, but Chloe, old enough to grasp the horror, kept asking questions they couldn't answer. Later that night, Lieutenant Morris called again, his tone heavy. "We have a match," he said. "Dental records confirm the remains belong to Emily Carter. She was 17, went missing 15 years ago." 15 years. The name resonated vaguely with some older neighbors who stopped by in the following days, offering condolences awkwardly mixed with morbid curiosity. They remembered Emily, a bright, popular girl who vanished one summer night after attending a party. The case went cold, they said. Vigils dwindled. Life, for most, moved on. Paul and Sarah debated leaving. The house felt tainted, the town's initial welcome now strained with suspicion and whispers. But uprooting the kids again, especially after the move from the city, felt cruel. "We stay," Paul told Sarah firmly one evening, the glare of lingering news vans still visible through the blinds. "We didn't do anything wrong. This place deserves a chance to be a home." Sarah agreed, but doubt lingered every time a car slowed down outside or a neighbor offered a pitying look. The house felt different after dark. Shadows seemed deeper, noises amplified. Chloe became withdrawn, jumping at every creak, convinced someone was watching from the yard. Ben started having nightmares, waking up crying about monsters in the water. Even Paul felt the unease, catching himself checking locks multiple times, listening for sounds that weren't there. He sat by the living room window one night, staring at the now empty pool basin, illuminated by a temporary police spotlight. How did a body stay hidden there for 15 years? Who put Emily Carter there? And what else was this quiet town hiding beneath its peaceful facade? 2 days later, Paul couldn't just wait for answers. He contacted Lieutenant Morris about the old case files on Emily Carter. Morris was polite but evasive. Records from that era are spotty, he admitted over the phone. Budget cuts back then, staff turnover, files might be incomplete, archived poorly. You might have better luck with old newspaper archives at the library. Paul felt a prickle of frustration. Spotty seemed suspiciously convenient for a missing teenager case that had gripped the town, however briefly. He went to the small Oak Haven library. A kind, older librarian, Mrs. Peterson, helped him navigate the clunky microfilm reader. He scrolled through grainy issues of the local paper from 15 years ago. Headlines about Emily's disappearance dominated for a few weeks, pleas from her distraught family. Then abruptly the coverage dwindled, replaced by town council news and local sports. A few angry letters to the editor hinted at police incompetence or a lack of effort, but there were no follow-up investigations reported, no official updates. Witnesses mentioned in early reports seemed to simply vanish from subsequent articles. In the margin of one faded article about a town infrastructure project heavily funded by Vance Development, someone had faintly penciled, "Always gets his way." Paul felt a chill. It felt less like a cold case and more like a deliberately buried one. He told Sarah what he'd found, spreading photocopies of the few relevant articles on their kitchen table. Someone powerful wanted this buried, she concluded, her expression hardening. But who? That evening, the landline rang, a rare occurrence. Paul answered. A hesitant female voice introduced herself as Nicole Evans. I went to school with Emily, she stammered, her words clipped with anxiety. I heard what you found at your house. There were rumors back then. But people warned us to keep quiet, really warned us, powerful people. Her voice trembled. I might know something, but I'm not sure it's safe to talk. Paul's pulse quickened. Would you be willing to meet, somewhere public? We just want to understand what happened. Nicole hesitated. Maybe, I need to think. The Vances, they had influence. Graham Vance, the developer, his son Kyle. He was, involved. The fear in her voice was palpable. People who crossed the Vances back then, things happened, jobs lost, worse. She promised to call back, then abruptly hung up. Sarah had overheard parts of the conversation. The Vances, she repeated softly, the name now carrying a heavier weight. Another piece. The pattern felt chillingly clear. Silence enforced by fear and tangible consequences. That night, Paul felt the weight of their discovery pressing down. The previous owner, Richard Blackwood, died in a supposed boating accident years ago, just months after Emily vanished. Witnesses went silent. Now Nicole Evans was terrified to talk about the Vances. How deep did this conspiracy run? Paul waited anxiously throughout the next day for Nicole's promised call. It never came. He tried the number she'd called from, but it went straight to voicemail. Disappointment warred with a growing, sickening unease. Had she simply been scared off? Or worse? The answer arrived with the local morning news alert on Sarah's phone. She gasped, holding it out to Paul, her face pale. Paul, look. Woman found deceased in apparent accidental overdose. The victim was identified as Nicole Evans. Authorities cited no signs of foul play pending toxicology reports. Accident? Right after she called us? Paul stared at the screen, a cold dread washing over him. He remembered the distinct fear in her voice when she mentioned the Vances. No way! They got to her! They knew she was going to talk. If Nicole could be silenced so quickly, so neatly, what did that mean for them? The danger suddenly felt immediate, personal. Shaken but more determined than ever, Paul felt they needed more than old newspaper clippings. That afternoon, while sorting through dusty boxes left behind in the attic, Sarah stumbled upon a small, plain cardboard carton tucked away in a dark corner. Inside, she found 8 unlabeled VHS tapes. The box clearly had space for at least one more, maybe 2. An empty slot yawned accusingly. Curious and increasingly suspicious of everything related to the house, she brought them downstairs. Paul dug out an old VCR from the basement, wiping dust off the casing. They inserted the first tape. Static flickered, then resolved into shaky home video footage. A backyard party. Their backyard. Teenagers milled around, laughing and chatting, but occasionally glancing nervously off camera. The date stamp was missing or illegible. Suddenly Emily Carter walked past, smiling, seemingly unaware she was being filmed. The camera work felt furtive, unprofessional, lingering on the girls with an uncomfortable focus. Paul and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't typical home movie footage. As they strained to hear the muffled background chatter, a man's low whisper was barely audible. "Don't let Graham see," before the camera abruptly jerked away. Other tapes showed similar scenes, different gatherings, always in that yard, always filmed secretly, often from odd, hidden angles. On one, the camera zoomed tightly on Emily talking earnestly to a friend near the pool's edge. Her expression seemed troubled. Then, the same low male voice muttered something sharp, indistinct, and the footage cut abruptly to black. It felt invasive, predatory. Richard Blackwood must have been the cameraman. But why was he filming these kids? Was it blackmail, voyeurism? And what crucial scene might have been on the missing tape, the one someone had apparently removed? Days later, Paul was outside attempting some yard work when he saw an elderly man shuffling slowly along the sidewalk across the street. He recognized him as Arthur Jenkins, a neighbor someone had mentioned, a retired police officer suffering from memory problems. Arthur paused, staring intently at their house, his expression distant, almost haunted. Paul offered a polite wave. Arthur blinked, seeming to register Paul for the first time, then nodded curtly. "New folks," he mumbled, his gaze drifting towards the now filled-in pool area. In Blackwood's place. He knew the former owner. "Long time. Since—" Arthur trailed off, confusion clouding his features, and shuffled away towards his own house. The brief flicker of recognition regarding Blackwood struck Paul. That evening, Sarah baked a small batch of cookies, suggesting they bring them over as a neighborly gesture, a pretext to learn more. "We should at least introduce ourselves properly," she said. Paul felt hesitant, not wanting to intrude, but Arthur's reaction felt significant. They crossed the street at dusk. A tired-looking woman, Linda, answered the door. "I'm his caretaker," she explained softly. "Arthur has good days and bad days, early-stage dementia." She invited them in. Arthur sat in an old recliner, eyes fixed on a muted television. He barely glanced at them. But when Sarah gently mentioned they lived across the street, in the old Blackwood house, his eyes suddenly focused, widening slightly. "That pool," he muttered, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest. "Shouldn't have—" Shouldn't have listened. Listened to who, Arthur? Paul asked gently, keeping his voice calm. Arthur struggled, his face contorted with the effort of recalling something painful, something buried deep. Fear flickered in his eyes. Chief Harrison, he finally rasped out. Told me look away. Said it was an accident. His breathing grew ragged, agitated. Saw them. Bring her out. Heard her. Scream. Tried to file a report. He said, shut up, or you'll end up in that pool too. The words tumbled out, fragmented but terrifyingly clear. A threat from the past echoing in the quiet living room. Linda rushed to his side, trying to soothe him. It's okay, Arthur. It's okay. A quick online search back home confirmed that Gerard Harrison had indeed been the Oak Haven police chief 15 years ago, lauded in press clippings for reducing petty crime while Emily Carter's case quietly went cold. Paul immediately called Lieutenant Morris, relaying Arthur Jenkins' fragmented but damning accusation about the former chief's threat and cover-up order. Morris sounded more attentive this time, less skeptical, but still cautious. I'll look into it, he promised, but Arthur's condition, it makes his testimony difficult. Paul wasn't content to wait for official channels that had already failed Emily once. A search of county records yielded a current address for the retired Chief Harrison, living on a small property on the outskirts of town. Are you sure about driving out there by ourselves? Sarah asked nervously as they arranged for Chloe and Ben to stay with a trusted neighbor. We need answers, Sarah, Paul replied, his jaw tight with resolve. The tapes, Arthur's story, Nicole's death, it all points back to a deliberate cover-up. We have to confront him. Harrison's house lay down a lonely road, looking neglected. An elderly, wary man eventually answered Paul's knock. When Paul explained who they were, mentioned the house, the pool, and Emily Carter's name, Harrison's expression instantly tightened. He let them in reluctantly. The air inside smelled stale, of old tobacco and dust. Harrison lowered himself into an armchair, avoiding their eyes. We know you silenced Officer Jenkins about Emily Carter, Paul stated evenly, deciding a direct approach was best. Harrison scoffed at first. Arthur's mind is gone, don't trust his ramblings. But his dismissive tone lacked conviction. Sarah pressed gently. We have reason to believe Emily was killed, and her body ended up in our pool. Arthur said you silenced him. We just want the truth. Harrison rubbed a hand over his lined face, his gaze flicking between them. He looked cornered, exhausted by the weight of the secret. I was protecting the town, he finally muttered, the words barely audible. Protecting my department. He let out a long, ragged sigh. Yes, he admitted, the single word heavy with resignation. Graham Vance, the developer? He leaned on me hard. His son Kyle was at Blackwood's party that night. Kyle and Emily argued near the pool. He hurt her. Pushed her, maybe worse. She hit her head. They thought she was dead, panicked. Harrison squeezed his eyes shut. Donovan Vance called me the next day, said if his boy went down for this, he'd pull his funding, ruin the department, ruin me. The mayor at the time backed him up. They made Blackwood handle the disposal. Blackwood filmed those parties. Maybe he had his own leverage, I don't know. When Emily's body finally surfaced, well, Vance made sure Blackwood had his boating accident soon after. The confession hung in the air, sickening in its cold calculation, a murder covered up by wealth, political influence, and fear. Donovan Vance is still powerful, Sarah said quietly, thinking of his current role on the county board, his name synonymous with local progress. He's untouchable, Harrison muttered, slumping in his chair. Be careful. The Vances won't like you digging this up. They protect their own. As Paul and Sarah drove home, hearts pounding with the weight of Harrison's confession, Sarah found a plain white envelope tucked under their doormat. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a typed message, "Stay out of matters that don't concern you." No signature. The threat felt chillingly real after Harrison's warning. The intimidation escalated quickly. The next morning, Paul discovered the tires on their family car slashed in the driveway. Deep cuts marred the sidewalls. Frustration and fear surged through him. A few days later, Chloe found her bike tires slashed while parked outside the library after school. Tucked into the spokes was a small note reading, "Last chance, quit." They reported both incidents, but the police offered little reassurance. The final straw came when Ben was walking home from a friend's house nearby. He tripped hard over a freshly snapped tree branch deliberately placed across the sidewalk, spraining his ankle badly. The friend's mother saw someone dart into the bushes nearby but couldn't get a clear look. It was a calculated act, meant to harm their child. Terrified for their family's safety but more resolute than ever, Paul and Sarah realized they couldn't rely solely on the official investigation, which seemed hampered by the Vances' lingering influence. They decided to force the issue. Working late into the night, Paul carefully extracted key snippets from Blackwood's VHS tapes, showing the unsettling atmosphere of the parties, Emily appearing unaware she was being filmed, the creepy voyeuristic style. They uploaded the brief clips anonymously to a video-sharing platform, adding a concise text summary hinting at a long-buried crime, a cover-up involving powerful local figures, and the recent discovery of Emily Carter's remains. They didn't name names yet, but the implication was clear. The clips began to gain traction online almost immediately. Comments flooded in, outrage, shock, shared memories of Emily, demands for a real investigation. The town was buzzing. The blowback from the perpetrators came swiftly. Anonymous calls with heavy breathing, then clicks. Another note under their windshield wiper, "Your move." Then one afternoon, a timid knock at their front door. A young woman stood on the porch, looking pale and nervous. I'm Megan Riley," she managed, twisting her hands. "I was Emily's best friend." Paul and Sarah ushered her inside. Megan perched on the edge of the sofa, clutching a worn backpack. "I saw the videos online," she said, her voice trembling. "People are talking. I can't keep this secret anymore. It's haunted me for 15 years. With agonizing guilt, Megan recounted how Emily had confided in her weeks before she vanished. Kyle Vance, Graham Vance's son, had cornered and physically assaulted her after an earlier party. Emily was shaken but determined to report him. She had evidence, text messages, maybe photos. They had planned to meet the very evening she disappeared, so Emily could show Megan the proof and decide what to do. "She never showed up," Megan cried softly. "I reported her missing, told the police about Kyle, but they brushed me off, said she was probably just upset over a boyfriend." Megan confirmed the rumors about Richard Blackwood being a fixer for the Vances, using his house for private parties, possibly filming people for leverage. "Everyone whispered the Vances silenced Blackwood after he helped hide Emily's body," Megan added, shuddering. "Seeing your tapes, knowing you found her, I had to come forward. Emily deserves justice." Megan's testimony was the missing link, direct evidence of Kyle Vance's motive, fear of exposure for assault, and corroboration of the cover-up narrative provided by Arthur Jenkins and Chief Harrison. Lieutenant Morris, presented with Megan's sworn statement alongside the tapes and the other evidence, finally had an undeniable case bolstered by the growing public pressure fueled by the online videos. "We have enough now," he told Paul, Sarah, and Megan in his office, his voice firm with newfound resolve. "We're proceeding. Search warrants are approved." Within 48 hours, Morris's team executed warrants on properties connected to the Vances. Investigators uncovered financial ledgers hinting at hush money, damning internal communications referencing incident containment, and even more videotapes from Blackwood's collection hidden in a storage unit. Crucially, phone records linked Kyle Vance directly to Nicole Evans in the days leading up to her death, including texts where she threatened exposure, and he responded with menacing warnings. The evidence strongly suggested Nicole's accidental overdose was anything but. The news broke dramatically one afternoon. Cameras captured uniformed officers entering an exclusive private golf club where Kyle Vance was attending a luncheon. He emerged moments later in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and fury as reporters swarmed him. Paul, Sarah, Chloe, and Ben watched the live feed from their living room. "Finally," Chloe murmured, sinking onto the couch. Seeing Emily's alleged attacker arrested offered a tangible sense of justice finally beginning. As the investigation deepened, Donovan Vance's role in orchestrating the cover-up came into sharper focus. Retired Chief Harrison faced formal investigation for obstruction. The entire network of complicity began to collapse under scrutiny. At a press conference outside the county courthouse, Emily Carter's mother and younger sister stood before the cameras, clutching an old photograph of a smiling Emily. "We never stopped hoping for answers," her mother said, her voice trembling, but strong. "Emily told us Kyle Vance had hurt her and threatened her if she spoke out. We always believed her. It hurt for 15 years that no one else would. Thank you," she paused, looking directly at the camera. "To the family who found her and fought to uncover the truth." Paul and Sarah watched, tears brimming in Sarah's eyes. They had never known Emily, but her story now felt deeply personal. While the legal process would take time, they decided it was time to reclaim their own space. They hired contractors to fill the pool cavity with soil and gravel, determined to erase the physical reminder of the darkness it held. Day by day, heavy machinery rolled across the driveway as the muddy pit that once hid Emily's body gradually disappeared under heaps of earth. Sarah set aside a corner of the leveled yard to plant a small memorial garden. Lavender, forget-me-nots, a young dogwood tree, a quiet symbol of remembrance and renewal. Several weeks passed. The atmosphere around the Miller home relaxed. With Kyle Vance arrested and Donovan Vance facing his own legal battles, the threats ceased. No more anonymous notes, no more vandalism. The best sign of healing came one warm afternoon when Chloe and Ben raced into the freshly leveled backyard, their laughter echoing freely. Paul watched from the back patio as Chloe sprinted past the newly laid grass seed, Ben on her heels, their movements unburdened by fear. Sarah joined Paul on the patio, slipping an arm around his waist. Together they listened to the children's excited shouts. The house felt different now, lighter. He put an arm around her. With a shared smile, they jogged out onto the grass, joining their children under the warm, reassuring sun. Thank you for watching, and for believing that the truth, no matter how long it stays buried, always deserves to come to light.